Have you ever woken from a dream, not with a scream, but with a terrifying, silent certainty? A certainty that what you experienced was not a fiction of your subconscious, but a message or a threat. We spend our lives building walls to protect ourselves from the dangers we can see, but our minds, in the deepest hours of the night, are open doors. We believe we are safe, locked away in our own skulls, but thought is a current, and emotion is a tide, and a powerful hatred, a burning obsession. These things do not respect physical barriers. They can travel on the currents of thought and seep under the door of our dreams, poisoning the one place we believe we are truly alone. And so it was with Sofia, an architect of life, a woman who believed in solid foundations, in logic and reason. But a foundation means nothing when the rot begins from within. Her story did not begin with a ghost in her house. It began with a ghost in her head. It was a haunting of the most intimate kind, a recurring nightmare that became her nightly ritual, a corridor that tasted of old wood and despair, the scent of a cigar, not like a faint memory, but like an active, watching presence in the room with her. And the music, a broken violin melody that was not just a sound, but the very signature of her tormentor. Soon the signature began to appear on the pages of her waking life, inexplicable scratches on her furniture, the phantom music playing from silent devices. She came to me seeking a cure for nightmares, believing her own mind was betraying her. But the cards do not offer cures. They offer truths. They showed us that her dreams were not a sickness, but a carefully addressed letter, sent by a hidden hand. Stay with me and witness how the fall of a few pieces of cardboard tore back the veil and exposed the face of a monster who was hiding in plain sight. Even before the bell above my door announced her, I felt her arrival. It was a subtle disturbance in the room's stillness, like a single cold note played on a distant piano. A card, the 3 of Swords, had slipped from the deck as I shuffled it, an hour prior, landing face up on the rug. A warning of heartbreak, yes, but this felt different, more invasive. It was the feeling of a story that was not waiting to be told, but one that was already screaming, unheard, from behind a wall of silence. I knew then that my next visitor was not coming for a simple glimpse into the future. She was coming to find an escape from a present that had become unbearable. When Sofia finally walked in, the tiny brass bell chimed a sound too cheerful for the energy that followed her through the door. She was the very picture of curated success, wrapped in a tailored cashmere coat, the color of a winter sky, her dark hair pulled back in a severe, elegant knot. But the architecture of her composure was failing. I saw it in the faint, violet shadows beneath her eyes that no amount of expensive concealer could fully hide, and in the way her fingers, adorned with a single minimalist silver ring, trembled almost imperceptibly as she clutched her leather handbag. She was carrying her life like a pristine glass box, as I had first thought, but now I could see the web of fine hairline cracks spreading across its surface. She sat opposite me, the ancient wood of the table between us. The air in my parlor is thick with the stories it holds, scented with melting beeswax, dried rosemary, and the sweet decay of old paper. Heavy velvet curtains, the color of a deep bruise, absorb the sounds of the city, creating a sanctuary. But she had brought the city's noise with her. Not the clamor of traffic and people, but the internal shriek of a mind under siege. For a long moment, she said nothing, her eyes darting around the room, taking in the shelves of leather-bound books, the scattered crystals, the play of candlelight on the walls, as if searching for an exit before the conversation had even begun. "The world is loud today," I said softly, my voice intended to soothe, to anchor. "But the noise you carry is louder." She flinched, a small, almost imperceptible reaction. "I'm sorry," she began, her voice a carefully tuned instrument, striving for a professional calm. "I've just been busy. A major project at work is reaching its deadline." She offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's just stress. I'm sure of it." But as she spoke the word stress, I saw the image she was desperately trying to suppress. The long, dark corridor from her nightmares, the walls claustrophobically close. And I could hear what she could not. The faint, discordant shriek of a violin string being pulled, not just past its breaking point, but with a deliberate, malicious intent. She was trying to build a fortress of reason around a terror that had already tunneled in from beneath the foundations. I didn't need to look at her to see the truth. The cards already knew. I began to shuffle the deck, the soft, rhythmic whisper of the cards filling the silence, a language older than words. I laid the worn, purple velvet on the table, its darkness swallowing the candlelight. The first card I turned was not a surprise, but a brutal confirmation. The Tower. Struck by lightning, its crown crumbling, figures falling into the abyss. "Your foundations," I murmured. "They are shaken." But it was the detail that my eyes were drawn to, a detail that does not belong on this card. There in the ancient ink and paper, faint, angry lines clawing at the stone structure from within. They weren't cracks from the lightning, they were scratches. She leaned forward, her carefully constructed composure finally shattering. "What is that? What does that mean?" I met her gaze, letting the silence hang for a moment longer. "It means," I said, "you have spent so much energy building a fortress to keep the danger out. You never considered that it might have been locked inside with you all along." I let the image of the tower hang in the air between us, its silent scream of collapsing worlds echoing in the candlelight. Her breathing was shallow, rapid. The fortress had been breached. I pushed another card forward from the deck, sliding it across the worn purple velvet until it rested beside the tower, the Queen of Cups reversed, an image of profound emotional chaos. A beautiful queen, once serene upon her throne by the sea, now tumbles from it, her ornate cup spilling its contents not into the calm water, but into a churning, violent ocean that threatens to consume her. Intuition drowned by turmoil, Sofia let out a small, sharp gasp, as if she'd been struck. She looked down at her own hands, turning them over, examining the clean, short nails of an architect, a creator. "The scratch," she whispered, her voice thin and brittle. "This morning, on my nightstand. It's solid oak. My grandfather made it." Her eyes pleaded with me, begging for a rational explanation that could contain her rising panic. It must have been me, in my sleep. A nightmare, maybe. "Look at your hands, Sofia," I said gently, my voice holding no judgment, only truth. "They draw blueprints that create homes. They are instruments of precision and order. Now think of the mark on that oak. Was it orderly? Or was it an act of chaos, a furious, desperate attempt to unmake, to decreate?" I paused, letting her truly feel the difference. "The scratches are an echo, my child. Tell me about the sound that creates them." That was the key. The dam of her composure broke. "The violin," she confessed. the words spilling out in a torrent, her voice cracking. It's the music from the dream, but I hear it when I'm awake. 2 nights ago, in my car, the radio was off, the engine was off. There was complete silence. And then it started playing, not from the speakers, it was inside my head. So thin and sharp it felt like a needle dragging behind my eyes. I almost crashed, I thought I was going insane. I nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place, each one colder and sharper than the last. This is not the work of a blunt, raging spirit, I explained. An angry ghost is a storm that batters a house from the outside. This is the work of a patient spider, a spider that is not weaving a web in a corner of your room, but in the very architecture of your mind. The scent of cigar smoke is how it announces its presence. The violin melody is the silken, poisoned thread it uses to attach itself to your soul. I let my words sink in, and with every nightmare, every moment of waking terror, it pulls. It is not trying to kill you. It is trying to paralyze you, to wrap you in layer after layer of fear until you can no longer move. It is a poison, yes, but one that is administered drop by agonizing drop. One final card remained for this reading. I turned it over. The King of Wands reversed. A powerful, charismatic leader, now fallen from his throne, his wand no longer a symbol of creation but a broken club of impotent rage. A man whose authority has curdled into bitter, cruel despotism. And as I looked at the image, the vision in my mind sharpened. The shadow wreathed in that familiar, acrid cigar smoke now had form. A living man, pouring the acid of his own failure and jealousy into the vessel of her dreams. I looked up and met Sofia's terrified gaze. The cards show us a king who has lost his kingdom and now seeks only to burn down another's out of spite, I said, my voice low and steady despite the cold that was seeping into the room. The cards can show you the face of your enemy, Sofia. But what do you do when you realize it is the face of a man you once trusted completely? My last words fell into the silent room like stones into a deep well. The ensuing ripples were a wave of pure panic washing over Sofia's face. No, she said. The word sharp, defensive. She shook her head, a physical attempt to ward off the implication. That's impossible. There is no one. I don't have enemies. People don't do things like this. Her voice rose, laced with an anger that was just a mask for her terror. He was my champion. He supported me. He opened every door for me. This is absurd. She gripped the arms of the heavy wooden chair, her knuckles white. She was trying to anchor herself to logic while the floor of her reality was turning to quicksand. We look for monsters in the dark, I said, my voice remaining calm, a counterpoint to her rising panic. But we forget that rust is not the result of a single violent storm. It is the slow, silent work of moisture that we allow to seep in, day after day. I urged her to close her eyes. Forget your enemies, Sofia. Walk back into the gallery of your greatest successes. Go back to the beginning, not to the man who wished you harm, but to the one who wished you well. Now, think of the scent, the cigar smoke. Her eyes squeezed shut. I could feel the resistance, the mental walls she threw up, but the sensory trigger was too strong. A memory, dusty and sealed away in a vault of gratitude, began to crack open. I could see it with her. A corner office, 50 floors up, the city of Chicago a glittering tapestry below them, champagne glasses clinking. Her first major project, a resounding success. And him, Arthur Vance, a real estate titan, a man built like an oak tree, exuding power and the overwhelming scent of a Monte Cristo cigar. He had his arm around her shoulders, his grip heavy, proprietary. "You see, my girl?" His voice boomed in her memory, a sound she had always associated with pride. "I told you. You and me, we're building an empire." He was smiling, but in his eyes, she could now see the acquisitive glint of a collector appraising his most valuable new piece. "Arthur," she breathed, her eyes flying open, filled with a horrified disbelief. "It can't be." "Stay with the memory," I urged gently. "Follow the music." And as his face solidified in her mind, so did the sound, the violin. It wasn't a memory of a concert hall or a radio. It was his office, that same panoramic view, an antique phonograph, its brass horn gleaming, sat in the corner, playing that same sorrowful, slightly off-key melody. It was the soundtrack to the day she had finally found the courage to tell him she was leaving to start her own firm. He hadn't yelled, he hadn't argued. He had smiled that same paternal smile, stood up, and walked to the phonograph, turning the volume up just a fraction. "Sophia, my dear," he'd said, his voice smooth as velvet over steel. "A bird that can fly shouldn't stay in the nest. I'm proud of you. Just don't you ever forget who taught you how to build that nest in the first place." Sophia stared at me. The color drained from her face as the final piece of the puzzle slid into place, sharp and cruel. She saw it all now. He raised a glass of champagne to her that day, toasting her newfound freedom. But the man in her memory was not a master celebrating his apprentice. He was a king watching his most prized possession escape its gilded cage. And as the haunting melody of the violin played on, he was simply taking aim. The silence that followed the revelation was heavier than any I had ever felt in my parlor. It was the silence of a world fracturing. Sophia stared at the cards, but she wasn't seeing them. She was seeing years of her life rearrange themselves into a new, hideous pattern. The praise that had built her up, the support that had felt like a safety net, it was all a lie. "All those years," she whispered, her voice hollow with the ghost of her own misplaced gratitude. "Was any of it real, or was I just a project, a thing?" "He is a collector, Sophia, not a gardener," I explained, trying to give her a framework for this unthinkable betrayal. "A gardener finds joy when a flower they have nurtured is admired by all, even from a distance. A collector needs the butterfly pinned to a board, under glass, where only he can possess its beauty. Your talent was never a gift he wanted to give to the world. It was a rare jewel he wanted for his crown. Your decision to leave wasn't just a resignation. In his mind, it was a theft." The scratches on her door, the violation of her dreams, it was the desperate lashing out of a collector trying to damage the prize he could no longer own. "But why now?" she asked, her voice trembling with a rage that was finally beginning to replace the shock. "Why this poison?" I closed my eyes for a moment, focusing on the energy emanating from the King of Wands, that broken tyrant. The vision was clear. Because his own tower is beginning to crumble. The cards show me a man whose influence is fading, whose empire is not what it once was. As his power recedes in the waking world, he seeks to become a god in the world of your sleep. He is a king clinging to his last patch of land, your mind. He needs to see you fail on your own, to prove to himself that you were only ever great because of him. It's the ultimate revenge of a fragile ego. I then motioned for her to look at the cards again, at the invisible lines that connected them. This connection between you, is what gives him entry. It is not a clean thread, Sofia. It is a coarse, ugly rope woven from the strands of your past gratitude and admiration, which he now twists together with his present obsession. He holds one end, and you, with your fear and your doubt, hold the other. It's what makes this possible. The energy in the cards began to shift as I watched. It grew more focused, more impatient. The attacks were once a cruel game for him, I said, a new urgency in my voice. A way to torment you from afar. But something has changed. This now feels like a rehearsal. I looked up from the cards and met her gaze directly. He has tested the locks. He has mapped the hallways of your mind. He is no longer content to be the ghost in your machine. I took a deep breath, the air in the room suddenly feeling thin and cold. He wants to step onto the stage himself. Sofia's face was a mask of pure terror. "Step onto the stage," she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "What does that mean? That he'll find me? In my apartment? At my office?" The psychic threat had suddenly become terrifyingly physical. The monster was no longer just in her dreams. He was at the door. Her body trembled, a leaf in the wind of a storm she could not see. This was the precipice. The moment an oppressive fear threatens to become a final, paralyzing reality. "He feeds on this, Sofia," I said, my voice sharp but steady. A lifeline in her sea of fear. "Your terror is the air he breathes in your world, the very nourishment for his fragile ego. Without it, his shadow has no substance. He is a beggar king, and fear is the only currency he values." I slid one final card to the center of the table, turning it over to reveal the Strength card. A woman, serene and robed in white, gently closing the mouth of a massive lion, not with force, but with calm, compassionate authority. Look closely. She is not fighting the beast, she is taming it. The beast she is taming is not him, Sofia. It is her own fear. I leaned forward, my eyes holding hers. You cannot silence his hateful music by shouting over it. You must make it irrelevant. Tonight, when you are in that corridor and you hear his sad, repetitive tune, you will not run. You will stop. You will take a breath. You will close your eyes and you will listen past his noise until you can hear the rhythm of your own heart. From that rhythm, you will compose your own symphony, a song made of your talent, your resilience, your future. A melody so beautiful and so wholly yours that his pathetic tune will simply be lost in its magnificence. And so I watched as she stepped into the dream that night. I saw her in the dark corridor, the oppressive scent of cigar smoke filling the air. The distorted violin began its assault, louder and more menacing than ever before. She ran, but then she stopped. I saw her small figure come to a halt, her back to the unseen threat. I saw her shoulders rise and fall with a single deep breath. She turned around slowly, not with aggression, but with a profound, unshakable certainty. She closed her eyes, and as his music tried to claw at her, she began to hum. A simple note at first, then another, weaving together into a melody of quiet strength. The walls of the corridor began to recede. Light, warm and golden, began to pool at her feet, emanating from her. And in that light, for the very first time, she saw him, not as a titan, but as a small, withered figure at the far end of the hallway, his face contorted in a snarl of disbelief. He shrank away from her light, the cigar falling from his lips, its ember extinguished on the floor. Her symphony grew, a testament to her own power, and his figure dissolved into nothing. The psychic cord did not snap with a violent bang. It simply unraveled, turned to dust, and vanished on the final triumphant note of her song. She left my parlor that day understanding the ultimate truth. The scratches on her door were never a sign of Arthur's power. They were the desperate, pathetic marks of his own weakness. We sever the cords that bind us to our tormentors, not with spells or incantations, but with a simple, conscious choice. The choice to decide who is, and who is not, allowed to be the author of our own story. And in the end, Sofia chose to write her own. I did not see Sofia again for 6 months. The cards sometimes whispered of her journey, showing images of blueprints, of light-filled structures of glass and steel taking shape under her command. Then one evening, a story about a bold new architectural project appeared on my tablet. A new cultural center that would reshape the city's skyline. The lead architect, praised for her visionary and fearless design, was Sofia. There was a photo of her on the construction site, smiling, her face open and bright. In the background, out of focus, a construction foreman was smoking a cigar. A coincidence, of course, but I know she saw it. And I know that for her, it was no longer a trigger for fear, but a quiet final confirmation of her victory. Her story is not merely one of supernatural attack. It is a story of liberation. It reminds us that the most formidable walls are not made of stone or wood, but of belief, and the most persistent ghosts are not the spirits of the dead, but the lingering power we give to the living. She was trapped not by Arthur's power, but by the memory of her admiration for him. Ask yourself, whose old opinions have you allowed to become the blueprints for your own life? Whose voice do you still hear in your moments of doubt, long after they have stopped speaking? You are the sovereign of your own soul, the architect of your own spirit. The most potent magic in this world is the quiet, unshakable decision of who you allow to influence your life. If a story of your own transformation now whispers in your mind, a time you reclaimed your own power, I invite you to share it in the comments below. Your story may be the key that another soul is searching for. If you are ready to explore the architecture of your own soul and challenge the ghosts of your past, then join our small congregation of souls by subscribing to this channel. There are countless stories waiting in the cards, each one eager to be told. The cards have been read, and this story is now complete. But yours is still being written. Choose your authors wisely.